The morning begins as it does in most ordinary homes. Breakfast is served. Clothes are neatly pressed. The car is meticulously checked and ready. The grounds are swept clean and the gardens tended. Only this is no ordinary household. For the past 250 years, this has been the home of the most politically powerful man in the Philippines. And it is, understandably, now the most tightly guarded compound in the country.
This is the symbol of we're a country that is developing. This is both an opportunity and, I guess, the emphasis on the burdens of anybody who sits here.
For the next hour, we will be taking you on a tour of this storied presidential palace. Getting a glimpse of its turbulent past. Getting to know the people who are responsible for the safety of a president. This is Inside Malacanang. This is where decisions on the welfare of more than 90 million Filipinos are made. It has welcomed world leaders, kings and queens of nations. It is the official residence and principal workplace of the President of the Philippines. Situated on the north bank of the Pasig River, Malacanang is composed of several historic buildings, including the main palace, which houses the living quarters of the President and the First Family. Bonifacio Hall, which served as the offices of former President Corazon Aquino and residence of former President Joseph Estrada. Kalayaan Hall, the oldest part of the palace, combines the histories of the American, Commonwealth, and Second and Third Republics. Mabini Hall, which now serves as the administrative building, and the new executive building built by former President Corazon Aquino. Manuel Manolo Quezon III is the grandson of former President Manuel Quezon. Prior to his appointment as President Benigno Simeon Aquino III's communications official, Quezon led the palace restoration during the term of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo.
The Rizal Ceremonial Hall is the room where the great ceremonies of state take place. You'll see that this is where the President holds oath-takings. This is where important legislation is signed. It's what used to be the balcony of Malacanang Palace before it was rebuilt in 1978. Its features are quite unique. There are the chandeliers carved in Betis, Pampanga. It has three domed ceilings that are gilded. It's also where presidents return to Malacanang for the last time because it's where the lying-in state of presidents take place.
On the right side of the reception hall leading to the Rizal Ceremonial Hall is where you can find the Aguinaldo State Dining Room.
When President Aguinaldo was captured by American forces in 1901, this is where he was held as a prisoner by the Americans for a few months until his release.
This is the music room. Private meetings with important guests of the President are usually held here. It has no windows. The walls and ceilings exceed normal specifications for thickness and load-bearing ability. A room where the President can feel truly safe. But for obvious security reasons, other details about this chamber may not be revealed.
Behind it is a conference room that used to serve as First Lady Imelda Romualdez Marcos's private office. And over the years, it has been, the books in turn were taken out from that during the time of President Estrada, and it was turned into a conference and dining room. And it's now known as the Ramos Room because President Ramos also used to like holding meetings and holding office there. Definitely one of the considerations for rebuilding Malacanang in 1978 was to make it a structurally sound and secure building. This means that the walls and the ceilings definitely have taken security considerations into account, and therefore there would be areas that have walls that would exceed your normal specifications for thickness and load-bearing ability compared to normal residences.
President Noynoy Aquino's favorite room is the basement.
The basement had Mrs. Imelda Marcos's extensive collections of shoes, clothes, perfume, etc. We were there during the '89 coup when the so-called Toro planes were strafing and rocketing Malacanang.
More than the President's working office, Malacanang is also the official residence of the President and that of the First Family. We take you behind the scenes for an exclusive look at the private living quarters of the most influential family in the country.
It is the official residence of presidents, and in the past, the families of the presidents would live in the quarters that were assigned to them within the south wing, and north wing of Malacanang Palace. What's now known as the President's Room is the enlargement of the private dining area for the presidential families. And as each administration comes and goes, they find different rooms and different assignments for these rooms. Generally today, this is where the President would have more informal dinners with important visitors and some private conferences. The last time that you would have seen people having access to the former private apartments and the family area of Malacanang Palace would have been during the time of the President's mother, during President Cory Aquino's government, when, of course, the entire palace practically was turned into a museum that was open to the public. Beyond that, after the Ramos administration onwards, these again reverted to their old use and became much more private spaces that were limited in terms of the access given to the media and the public.
But if the President were to be asked, he would rather live in the Aquino home in nearby Quezon City.
If you look at it, it's very ornate. It tends to be quite dark, and it's too big. I guess it just emphasizes the loneliness at the top. But given the choice, I'd rather be back in our house in Quezon City.
But how did the seat of power end up in this riverside vacation house? Malacanang is in fact older than the Republic itself. In the late 1700s, it was a leisure villa of a Spanish gentleman named Luis Rocha. It was later purchased by the state to become the temporary residences of the Governors General. When the official residence of the Governor-General was destroyed by an earthquake, Malacanang was chosen to take its place.
If you were to ask the Spaniards themselves, they would have said that it came from the word mamalakayak, which means fisherman, because in the vicinity of the palace today is when fishermen coming down from Laguna de Bay and other areas would lay out their catch.
When the Americans took over the country in 1899, General Arthur MacArthur turned the palace into a military camp, using an iron hand to fiercely combat resistance. It wasn't until William Howard Taft's turn as American Governor-General that Malacanang's image changed. In 1935, Manuel Quezon became the first president to have Malacanang as his official residence. When the Second World War broke out, the Japanese turned Malacanang into a gilded prison for their occupation government. In the 1950s, President Magsaysay opened Malacanang to the people. It has become a symbolic seat of power. Even in the direst time of war, the undisputed belief was that no one rules the Philippines until he does it from Malacanang. Since 1935, 14 presidents have worked in the palace. Among them, former President Corazon Aquino and her only son, Benigno Simeon Aquino III, more popularly known as Noy Noy. With a promise of stamping out corruption, Noy Noy would win the presidential elections in 2010 with one of the biggest margins under the present Constitution.
Hindi ko inakala na darating tayo sa puntong ito na ako'y manunumpa sa harap ninyo bilang inyong Pangulo.
It is a big challenge. President Noy Noy carries with him not only the legacy of his parents, but also the dreams of most Filipinos of a better life.
Panahon na upang tayo ay muling magkawanggawa. The people who are behind us dared to dream. Today, the dream starts to become a reality.
To sign any amnesty or pardon because I feel that
his father, former Senator Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr., was the most vocal among President Ferdinand Marcos's critics. Upon returning to Manila from 3 years of exile in the U.S., the senator knew it was dangerous to come home.
I'm ready to be shot.
Upon arrival at the Manila International Airport, assassins knew he was wearing a bulletproof vest. He was shot in the head. Noy Noy's mother, President Cory Aquino, took over the reins of the government when people power overthrew decades of dictatorship.
Alam ko na minamahal ninyo ako.
She opened the formerly inaccessible Malacanang Palace to the public. Malacanang has been the Spanish Empire's palace, MacArthur's military camp, the Japanese showcase for occupation. Now it has finally become the Filipino people's symbol of freedom.
It's just really a question of doing that which is right. And so long as the people are behind us, we can really force everybody to stop the age-old practices that have not benefited their people. We will be the ones to really try and rectify the situation, revitalize all of the institutions, and make this democracy really a working democracy.
Next, how do you protect a president from threats within and without the palace? Of the many thousands under the government's employ, 4 men have been chosen and given the honorable and unique task of accompanying the president wherever he goes. They are Jaime Castro, the presidential food tester; Senior Police Officer 4 Lito Africano, the president's personal bodyguard; J. Morales, the presidential photographer; and Colonel Ramon Mateo Dizon, commander of the Presidential Security Group.
Sergeant Jaime Castro.
25 years ago, Jaime Castro started working for former President Corazon Aquino as a food tester and personal security guard. Back then, he was Constable Second Class at the Philippine Constabulary. Now he spends much of his time in the palace kitchen, one of the most secure areas in Malacanang. It's where meals for the president as well as for visiting dignitaries are prepared. Work starts early for the president's chef. He is accompanied by Jaime, more popularly known in Malacanang Palace as Caster. He is no ordinary member of the kitchen staff. Castro is an officer of the Philippine National Police with the rank of Senior Police Officer 3 and a member of the Presidential Security Group. His duty is different from other security officers. He is the President's official food tester.
We were trained then at the National Bureau of Investigation to test and analyze all the foods, different kinds of poisons, and conduct intelligence gathering, background investigations of the chef and the waiters that will serve the President. Especially during presidential engagement in the hotels or outside the country, we were taught how to coordinate and analyze all those possible threats against the President.
Everything from the water used in cooking and as drink to the ingredients and seasonings undergo a close inspection under the watchful eyes, nose and tongue of Castro. Unlike other security officers, Castro is armed not with a gun, but with a flashlight. He uses this to spot any possible discoloration in the food, keeping a sharp lookout for possible contamination.
We sit with 2 hours or 3 hours before the food is served to the President is being already checked, and all the food that were bought outside the residence or in our functions, we try to check. We have some reagents and chemicals used in detecting this kind of different kind of poisons. First line of defense also. You cannot assassinate the President only by means of bullet, but by means of food.
He's very thorough. I don't think there's been an instance that any of us have had food poisoning, even during my mother's time. But sometimes when you're really very hungry, he has to check on everything, including the condiments. No? So sometimes the process of getting fed gets a little longer.
This morning, Castro monitors the preparation of the President's favorite dish, pork adobo, or pork marinated with vinegar and soy sauce. It will be served for lunch.
I think I have a fun job and exciting job because before the President eats his food, I'm the first one to eat it first. Oh, it's a very big responsibility because if anything happens to the President, I'll be answering to the Filipino people. So I always double check and make sure all the food is safe.
For Castro, this is a big responsibility. The President's life is in his hands, or more accurately, in his eyes and taste buds.
I don't think I have the competence to tell him what he has to do. He has been trained quite thoroughly, both here and abroad, with that function.
It's an honor to be one of the trusted security detail of the President, sir.
For Castro, it's an honor to be one of the President's most trusted persons. For the President of the Philippines, the threat of assassination is always a clear and present danger. President Corazon Aquino survived 9 coup attempts. Her only son Noynoy almost died in one of those attempts. On August 28, 1987, Noynoy and his security personnel came under fire. Noynoy was wounded. One of the bullets is still embedded in his neck.
After the first or the second salvo, they said, go out, no? And then when I got out, they said to lie down. When I lie down, they said, not here. Then they said, go back in. When I was going back in, I heard firing again, no? Well, they were very trigger happy. So I assumed that these were our men who had sustained the initial attack. In the initial attack, we lost 2 men right away.
Then Captain Jose Angel Honrado, commanding officer, presidential escort under the Presidential Security Group, led the team in extracting Noynoy from the kill zone.
Immediately, I approached the car of President Aquino, and I saw him bloodied and lump on the driver's seat. I said, "Oh my God, just go on," because he was all bloodied up, and and I started shouting orders to the soldiers to immediately extricate the rest seat. So I took him out and then boarded him to this Samaritan vehicle and brought him to our Legi house for treatment. We called in doctors and nurses from the PSG hospital. They came over and provided first aid treatment to him.
Hindi ko po papayagan na itong mga taong ito na muling nagsisinungaling sa atin ay ibalik yung kanilang karahasan nung nakaraan na diktador.
In this rare footage, never before seen by the public, President Corazon Aquino is evacuated on a barge by members of the Presidential Security Group across the Pasig River during the siege on the palace. Day in and day out, the Presidential Security Group is the one tasked to protect the President. As commander of the Presidential Security Group, or PSG, Army Colonel Ramon Mateo Dizon is not only accountable to the President, but to the entire nation composed of more than 90 million Filipinos.
Very big responsibility. There were millions of Filipinos who voted for this president, for example. And if something happens to this president, then that's something that the group commander has to think about. We have to make sure every day that when the president wakes up and goes through his daily routine, that at the end of the day he comes back home safe. It's not only the president, but also the family and other dignitaries that we protect.
There has to be of utmost trust and confidence. No? So Colonel Dizon was with us when my mother assumed the office. He was, I guess, a lieutenant at that time, at the most a captain. He was a young officer. He went through us in battling the coups during my mother's time. He was of sufficient rank and sufficient experience, sufficient training, and he's a person that I know of that enjoys my full trust and confidence. So the competence and the trust aspects are there. So I chose him to become my group commander.
Through the recommendations of senior military officials, he was appointed by President Noynoy Aquino himself to head the PSG. As a member of former President Corazon Aquino's security detail, Dizon was part of the PSG's first batch to have been trained by the U.S. Secret Service for VIP security. As former commander of the Joint Special Operations Group of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, he was responsible for the deployment of elite special operations units of the armed forces. He served 3 former presidents, Corazon Aquino, Fidel Ramos, and Joseph Estrada. Today, his former command, the Joint Special Operations Group, is at the forefront in the fight against the Al-Qaeda-linked Abu Sayyaf in Basilan and other parts of Mindanao.
I think the best edge is that we constantly train. Okay? We are constantly training to do our work, whether it be in protection, in area security, in keeping our vehicles running. I think we're one of the organizations that send a lot of people out on training. But I think that's what you need to have. People who are competent in the way they do their job.
Senior Police Officer 4 Lito Africano is the personal security aide of the President. He belongs to the President's inner circle of security personnel.
Stand by! Number 1, siyempre yung security niya.
kailangan magiging alert lagi. Expect the unexpected. Kasi ganyan ang security. Pangalawa, yung mga sa personal niya. Kasi ako yung pinaka-close talaga na security niya. Team leader ako dun sa team na kasama sa training namin.
Unlike any other security personnel detailed with the president, Lito takes care of even the most minute personal details that the president may need, especially in official functions abroad.
Ay, yung gamit niya, ako nag-take care. Yung mga pang-shooting na kami yung pag nasa abroad kami, hindi ko pinagkakatiwala yung damit niya. Kung kailangan ako mag-fix, ako na mismo. Yung masarap na parte siguro, yung andun kayo sa bahay. At yung medyo walang masyadong trabaho, yung andun siya nakikipag-banding, nakikipagbiruan, nakikipagkwentuhan, nakasama kami.
Senior Police Officer 4, Lito Africano. Lito is the personal security aide of the president. Lito was a member of the Special Reaction Unit, the PSG's assault team, while the president's mother was leading the country. From 1992 to 1998, Lito was reassigned to the Manila Police District. When President Noynoy ran for Congress in 1998, he tapped the services of Lito again until he became senator in 2007. When Noynoy ran for president in 2010, he was again at the president's side. Although he's not exactly sure why the president chose him, Lito says that he's proud of his job.
So they knew the risks and that they took with me. And I did offer them, I said, we can come back after this is over. If you have families, you'd rather ensure that you can return them. But they didn't opt out. They were with me through all the dangers that we had to face. And up to now, the dangers that we're still facing.
Napakalaking karangalan talaga. Kung part man ako ng history, lalo napakalaking karangalan para sa akin, saka nulit ko sa aking pamilya.
His job takes him to every place that the president goes, including the shooting range. He is so close to the president that the president has even taught him his trademark shot, to split a playing card into two. The president gave him a .45 caliber pistol, the same kind of weapon that the president uses. He is grateful for the gift and always carries it with him as his backup piece.
Siya yung naunang naubusan, pwede kong ibigay yung natitira kong bala na may extra bala ako, pwede kong pahiram sa kanya kasi same caliber, same. Ganon din sa akin kasi halimbawa, wala akong bala at mayroon pa siya, pwede na ako.
Like his superior, Colonel Dison, Lito says he is ready to sacrifice his life to save the president.
Ang expectation ng nakakarami nasa amin. Nasa amin yung nakasalalay yung kaligtasan ng Pangulo. Di baling ihalay namin ang buhay namin.
For Jay Morales, being the presidential photographer is a dream come true. When President Noynoy Aquino met with U.S. President Barack Obama in 2010, only 2 photographers were allowed to take pictures. One was Pete Souza, the official White House photographer. The other one was Jay.
Sinabihan ako ni Pete Souza na sabi niya wag daw ako mag-flash kasi disturbing doon sa pag-uusapan ng dalawa, and then yung mata ni Obama ayaw rin yata niya ng may flash. So sinabi ko sa kanya na okay, parehas tayo kasi yung presidente namin ganun din, ayaw niya na may flash. So, halos parang magkaparehas sila ng pagdating sa kumbaga pa sa kinukunan ng litrato.
Jay used to be a photojournalist. He was recommended by the Friends of the President as an official photographer for the 2007 senatorial campaign. Jay's photographs immediately captured the president's heart.
He really does have an artistic eye. One shot that I remember was in that was either Arneta or Quezon Memorial Circle. He took a shot from the back, and I mean, I'm not too technical about it, but the lighting, the composition of it was really something else. It was a shot that was taken on the fly as opposed to something that was posed. But the quality of the shot that came afterwards seems to make you think that it was actually posed when it wasn't. So he had the quickness, presence of mind to be able to frame it, take it at that exact instant to deliver that particular effect that was produced by the final print.
Papasalamat ako at nakita ni Presidente yun at isang honor sa akin yun. Masaya ako na yung trabaho ko pala ay napapansin niya. Si Presidente kasi bihira siya pumuri ng isang trabaho.
While Jay admits that he's new to the team, he says that there's something in him that easily earned him the president's acceptance.
Siguro, lagi kasi ako nakangiti eh. Kasi gusto niya kasi nang nakangiti ka para approachable ang tao. Kumbaga, ayaw niya nung nagkatrabaho ka na nakasimangot ka. Gusto niya nagkatrabaho ka na masaya ka o nakangiti ka sa mga tao. Kahit pagod na pagod ka, kailangan mo pa rin ngumiti. Kahit naiinis ka na, ngiti ka pa rin. Kaya yun siguro yung nagustuhan niya sa akin.
June 12th, Philippine Independence Day. To most Filipinos, this is a time to celebrate their freedom from 300 years of Spanish colonial rule. For the president, this is one of the nation's biggest celebrations. But for the Presidential Security Group, this is one of their biggest security operations. Days before the Philippine Independence Day, a high-level closed-door briefing is held. The mission: to protect the president from assassins, terrorists, and other criminal elements. The Presidential Security Group is led by Army Colonel Ramon Mateo Dizon. An intelligence report says terrorist groups would disrupt the ceremonies using explosive devices. The PSG believes that this is the time enemies of the state would most likely strike. At the PSG grounds, security personnel are practicing hand-to-hand combat techniques to disarm assassins. All types of terrorist and assassination scenarios are considered and prepared for. In this scenario, the president is abducted and taken as a prisoner. Dizon checks their anti-tank weapons for the president's convoy.
will defend the president to the last breaths of our lives. You know, in PSG, we're taught to protect, no? And when you protect people, you should be willing to take, like they say, take the bullet if it has to come to that. And I have no doubt in my mind that every one of us will protect the President of the Republic, no matter who he or she will be.
"5 a.m. on the day the security personnel have been preparing for. The presidential convoy leaves the Malacanang grounds. Their destination, the shrine of the first Philippine President, General Emilio Aguinaldo in Kawit, Cavite, where the first Philippine flag was waved in 1898. In front is the President's limousine. Behind it is his close-in security aide, Lito, and his commander, Colonel Dizon. Like the security personnel, Jay, the official photographer, is keeping his eyes open not for hostile forces, but for the best possible pictures of the President. The presidential convoy religiously follows the traffic rules, stopping at traffic lights even if he has the privilege not to do so. There is no siren while the presidential convoy rolls through the streets of Metro Manila. From the viewpoint of security experts, this makes the president an easy target for would-be assassins. When the convoy stops at traffic lights, members of the PSG get ready to move out of their vehicles to secure their charge.
If you look at other heads of state and their convoy, it is seldom that you will see a presidential motorcade or presidential convoy stopping for the red light. But the president has made it known that he did not want to use any sirens or wang-wang, and that he would like to stop for the red lights. So then the PSG has to adjust to this. While we would rather not do it, we would also want to, as much as possible, allow the president or give the president what he wants to do.
At the Aguinaldo Shrine in Cavite, where Philippine independence was proclaimed, Castor, the food tester, is busy. He gives instructions to the food servers. Since they are not allowed to cook inside the more than century-old house, food was catered. And it's up to Castor to determine if it's safe to be eaten by the president. While Castor and company are working, the presidential convoy is fast approaching. Military helicopters, including the presidential helicopter, are providing air cover for the president and his men. Up next, men in charge of the president's safety take their positions as the presidential photographer records history through his lenses. June 12th, Philippine Independence Day. The president's security personnel are putting their lives on the line, while the official photographer tries to document every moment of history. A few minutes later, the presidential convoy arrives.
Malugod naming ipinababatid ang pagdating ng ating Pangulo ng Republika ng Pilipinas, ang kagalang-galang Benigno S. Aquino III.
Lito and Colonel Vison immediately take their positions. Jay takes his shots, and President Noynoy Aquino leads the ceremonies.
Hiwalay at kalag-nakalag sa kapangyarihan ng Espanya. Sinasabi ko po sa inyo ngayon, sa ngalan ng buong Pilipinas, ipinahayag ko ang pagbubukas ng isang bagong yugto sa ating kasaysayan.
The president did not take his breakfast. He just drank water and soda, which was inspected by Castro. In the afternoon, the team of Castor, Colonel Vison, Lito, and Jay returned to Malacanang for the yearly Vin d'honneur, Independence Day reception, a gathering of foreign dignitaries and the diplomatic corps. Here, Castor takes charge of inspecting the food prepared for the president and his guests. And the president appears delighted. Just another day's work for Colonel Vison, Lito, Castor, and Jay. Whether safeguarding the president or immortalizing his image for future generations, they have successfully fulfilled their commitment to the president and to the Filipino people. Amid the bulletproof walls and windows and a colorful history, Malacanang means much more to the country and to its leaders.
If you were to look at Malacanang, it's been described as serving three functions for the people and for their leaders. It's a prize. It's the physical symbol of the presidency, of power, of ruling the country. It's a pulpit. It is where the country looks for leadership and direction in times of crisis or in times of adversity or in general to find out what is happening with their country. And it's a stage. It's where the great events of state visits, funerals, weddings, conferences takes place. At the same time, it is an object of pride. It's an object of identity. It's a reflection of our being an independent nation, of our being a democratic nation with presidents who are expected to be accessible to the people and who are expected to represent the people in everything that they do.
This is the symbol of we're a country that is developing. We're a country that has quite a huge number of problems that in effect has already driven a lot of our people out of our shores. Malacanang, to me, again, gives you the power to really affect the things that have to be done, to stop the age-old problems that there's no logic for it to be continued.
The structure itself has stood for more than 2 centuries. It has undergone changes in residence and in form far too many times to count. It has withstood wars, dictators, uprising, and calamities both God-given and man-made. But more than the wood and stone and steel that supports it, Malacanang was built on a foundation of majesty, power, and faith. It represents the hopes and dreams of the people.
Private office. And over the years, it has been, the books in turn were taken out from that during the time of President Estrada, and it was turned into a conference and dining room. And it's now known as the Ramos Room because President Ramos also used to like holding meetings and holding office there. Definitely one of the considerations for rebuilding Malacanang in 1978 was to make it a structurally sound and secure building. This means that the walls and the ceilings definitely have taken security considerations into account, and therefore there would be areas that have walls that would exceed your normal specifications for thickness and load-bearing ability compared to normal residences.
President Noynoy Aquino's favorite room is the basement.
The basement had Mrs. Melda Marcos's extensive collections of shoes, clothes, perfume, etc. We were there during the '89 coup when the so-called Toro planes were strafing and racketing Malacanang.
More than the President's working office, Malacanang is also the official residence of the President and that of the First Family. Kalayaan Hall, the oldest part of the palace, combines the histories of the American, Commonwealth, and Second and Third Republics. Mabini Hall, which now serves as the administrative building, and the new executive building built by former President Corazon Aquino. Manuel Manolo Quezon III is the grandson of former President Manuel Quezon. Prior to his appointment as President Benigno Simeon Aquino III's communications official, Quezon led the palace restoration during the term of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo.
The Rizal Ceremonial Hall is the room where the great ceremonies of state take place. You'll see that this is where the President holds oath-takings. This is where important legislation is signed. It's what used to be the balcony of Malacanang Palace before it was rebuilt in 1978. Its features are quite unique. There are the chandeliers carved in Betis, Pampanga. It has three domed ceilings that are gilded. It's also where presidents return to Malacanang for the last time because it's where the lying in state of presidents take place.
On the right side, we will be taking you on a tour of this storied presidential palace. Getting a glimpse of its turbulent past. Getting to know the people who are responsible for the safety of a president. This is Inside Malacanang. This is where decisions on the welfare of more than 90 million Filipinos are made. It has welcomed world leaders, kings and queens of nations. It is the official residence and principal workplace of the President of the Philippines. Situated on the north bank of the Pasig River, Malacanang is composed of several historic buildings, including the main palace, which houses the living quarters of the President and the First Family. Bonifacio Hall, which served as the offices of former President Corazon Aquino and residence of former President Joseph Estrada. The morning begins as it does in most ordinary homes. Breakfast is served. Clothes are neatly pressed. The car is meticulously checked and ready. The grounds are swept clean and the gardens tended. Only this is no ordinary household. For the past 250 years, this has been the home of the most politically powerful man in the Philippines. And it is, understandably, now the most tightly guarded compound in the country.
This is the symbol of we're a country that is developing. This is both an opportunity and, I guess, the emphasis on the burdens of anybody who sits here.
For the next hour, the reception hall leading to the Rizal Ceremonial Hall is where you can find the Aguinaldo State Dining Room.
When President Aguinaldo was captured by American forces in 1901, this is where he was held as a prisoner by the Americans for a few months until his release.
This is the music room. Private meetings with important guests of the president are usually held here. It has no windows. The walls and ceilings exceed normal specifications for thickness and load-bearing ability. A room where the president can feel truly safe. But for obvious security reasons, other details about this chamber may not be revealed.
Behind it is a conference room that used to serve as First Lady Imelda Romualdez Marcos's